Hey, we're live in the Horatio room at New Visions for Public School Goals. And we're JavaScript 101, week 5. And so I'm going to share folks on the syllabus. And we're going to review this week's Code Academy.
Is the syllabus, what's the best way to get to it, through the calendar?
Yeah, best way to get to the syllabus is through the calendar.
What's that?
Can you send the link to the Google account?
Oh, didn't you actually?
No, but I can't see. It's blank.
Go to the calendar thing. Okay, so we're going to work on arrays, array properties, iterating over arrays, and arrays of arrays. Christina, do you want to share your screen? You made these things?
Yeah. Okay, how's it looking?
Screen looks good.
Excellent. Okay, so what I thought we could do for this first component is I just listed out, I went through Code Academy and tried to parse out what the big ideas were from this week. So as Eric said, the focus was looking at arrays and arrays of arrays and then objects. So I just put in a few examples. So the first section we have is days, and this is an example of an array. If we call days bracket 0, what would be returned? You can just call it out or post it on Slack.
Monday?
You got it, excellent. So in an array, the first index is always 0, and then it counts up. So how, if we wanted to return this array of Wednesday, what would we write in?
Days 2.
Great. So days 2 is going to equal Wednesday. What would the return value be for days.length?
30.
Yeah. And so what is length doing?
Gives you a side of the array.
Yeah. Great. So it's just, and we've been using length a bit when we go to set values in a spreadsheet. So as opposed to counting up the number of values that you have in an array, you can just keep your code dynamic this way and just saying always set the value of the length. Okay, so then arrays don't have to be the same data type. You could have a mixture of strings, numeric values, and booleans. The next thing we came across, and any questions in the Slack community, in the Horatio community? Okay, beautiful, pressing onwards. So we were looking at a one-dimensional array. A two-dimensional array is when you have an array of arrays. And we're going to see this, we've already seen this when we pull in the data, often when we're working with a spreadsheet. So this will be easier to see in the code editor in a few minutes. And then the second component is objects. And this is something that we've also kind of been working with. But an object is always made up of what you say a key value pair. So you can key it to something and then you return the value. So in our example, the first one is just listing out the format. But then in this, when we're actually looking at two ways to create the object, there's the object literal where you would create your object. So object I'm going to set to var me, and then I would put in the key is the name and the value for that is Eric. And then I'm also going to include let's say a key of age and a value of 30. What is one more thing we could add to this? And Eric, you can chime in because this object's all about you.
You're generous with my younger than
I ballparked to that one.
Favorite color?
Ooh, lovely. Favorite color, so we're going to camel case that. Eric?
forest green.
Say
It's a solid color.
So now we've built out on this object with a key value pair.
Adding quotes, shouldn't it?
Thank you. Yes. Since this is a string, it most certainly should be in quotes.
And it doesn't need to be camel case, but it could be.
Good call. Yeah.
That might be a little confusing.
Thank you, Dimitri. So what I do want to point out, and this is definitely tripped me up, is when you're creating an object, if you look at the notation here, after each key value pair there is a comma except for the last one, and then that means it's the last key value pair of your object. It will throw an error if you're missing one or if by accident you use the semicolon. Okie dokes. Any questions? Cool. Good to go. So then the second way you can create an object is using an object constructor. So in this case, the first thing you're going to do is declare your object. So new object, and then you can pass it in the keys in two different ways. So you could say my object and then pass in name, or the way that I think is used a lot more is just saying my object dot name, and now I've built this object. And then below we have an example of a complete object getting built. This was taken directly from Code Academy.
And so something maybe to point out is just if you look at the way Christina made the key favorite color camel cased without any spaces, she could have created. She could have created that key with using quotes and put a space in between favorite and color. That would have been totally legal on the left as well. But the reason you often see camel cased no spaces is because that allows you to use that dot notation down where she's defined my obj dot name. Like you could have me dot favorite color, whereas really primarily the only time you'll see that syntax above with the bracket notation and name and quotes is if the key itself has a space in it, or like a non alphanumeric character.
Great. Thank you. So if there are no outstanding questions, at this point, let's go ahead and jump to the practice. So if you click on here, you can make a copy. All successfully made a copy. Okay, I'm seeing some nods from the audience. Excellent. Taking a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was a little delayed. I don't know. So at this point, let's go ahead and jump into the script editor. So another really basic data set. To get to the script editor, we'll go to Tools, Script Editor. And then make sure you're looking at the code. So per usual, I put the answers in the help document, but I want you guys to really do this one on your own. So I have two sets of instructions, but especially for those of us in Horatio, let's start with just one right now. So what I want you to do is go ahead and write a function that pulls the data from the sheet. And you can look back at old code. You can use the help document, but I encourage you not to. So we'll give you 5 minutes. If you guys within the room can just kind of give me a thumbs up when you're done. So our goal is to write a function that pulls in the data, and then we're going to do some things with it.
Last week's.
Hmm.
Is that what exactly do?
So the goal is to pull back the data values from this sheet.
Okay, so this is correct.
So can you test it? Do you remember how to test?
Save. Do you?
So as you're kind of working through it, if you can use the debugger to test it out. The Horatio crowd will give another few minutes. And Of those of us in Horatio, can you give a thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down in terms of time? I'm seeing middle, I'm seeing, Amy, yeah. Okay. Does anyone want to share their screen?
Someone other than me. Dimitri.
I just cut and pasted what we did before.
It works just as well as writing it.
There we go.
I mean, not proud of it.
Okay, so let's, Dimitri, do you mind if I make you the screen share?
Please do.
I just did. You actually can't.
Oh, I thought I did. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, Dimitri, do you want to, if you can just scroll up and kind of walk us through your process?
So to get the data from sheet 1, you want to create a very basic function. And basic function is function flag attendance. Can you see that?
Yep,
Yeah,
that's perfect.
That's good. Because the purpose of this was to sort of send out emails, I created a variable email address. I probably should change that to newvisions.org. And the kind of method is var ss equals spreadsheet app.getActive.
Mm-hmm.
The spreadsheet app, I believe, is a class. And this is, I believe, a method.
Yep.
Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Then you sort of.
And so what is that like returning? When we say return, it's like that's how you created this var ss and you attach this.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
What it's returning is it's returning this entire sort of spreadsheet without any kind of. It's just returning this entire active spreadsheet. And
Exactly.
And only when you go down here to var sheet equals ss, what it's doing now is it's delimiting precisely what part of the spreadsheet. Because in theory, I mean, here we only have sheet 1, but in theory you could have sheet 2, you could have sheet 3, you could have sheet 4. So the computer needs to know precisely what you're referring to. And then you kind of go further even down. You can identify what the last row is, and again, you use the sheet, which is the variable here, and you use, I believe this is called, this would be a method,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And you want to highlight the range. Again, you're kind of going from the least, sheet goes here, to goes here, to goes here. You're getting the range of all these things.
And what are you passing in on the range here?
Passing in the range, you will be passing in what will be an array. And the array will be this thing right here.
Mm-hmm.
This will be the first element. It'll be an array of arrays. This will be the first element of the array, the second element of the array, the third element. That's just one array. The second array will be 2, 8, 9. Then the other part of the array will be this, this, and this, and so on. So at least that's how.
Yeah, so that's when you pull back the data, that's exactly how it's going to appear.
Yeah.
The parameters for this method get range, so you're passing in the row where you want to start. So
Okay.
when you're
right,
telling it exactly start
right
on row 2.
So that's the first thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the 2. Then you want to tell it what will be the last column. So last column will be 1, 2, 3.
And that's actually how many columns.
Sorry.
So if you'd start on attendance, you would just pass in 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 2 and how many columns?
Sorry, I caused confusion there. It's row 2 and then which column. So you're telling it to start in the first column,
Yes.
which is just like this definitely confused me in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
In an array, you start at the 0th index, but in this range, the first column is actually column 1. So you couldn't say column 0. Yeah.
So you want to say column 1, right?
Yep, exactly as you did.
Okay. And sorry, I always forget which one. This is where things get a little trickier. You have the last row minus 1.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the way that I have talked with Jared about this is your last row is going to be, in theory, right here.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, though, is that we're not starting at 1. We're starting at 2. 1 is where our header is. We don't really care that much about it. We start right here. So there are 11 rows here, and if we were to go down 11, we would be right here.
Yep.
There's a superfluous, am I correct in this, Jared?
Yeah. Yep.
The explanation is not.
Well, another way to describe it, that's exactly right. But so it's if you went into the documentation for the parameters that it's asking for, what's a little bit confusing is it wants the starting row and the starting column. That's what the 2 and the 1 is.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't want the ending row and the ending column. It wants the number of rows and the number of columns.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where if you say get last row, it's just gonna return 11. But you don't want to count down 11 rows from your start row. You want to,
Because our start row is this 2. That's what we need to do. Our start row is this 2, and if we would actually go down 11, we would have this superfluous 12 here. Because it's blank, it probably won't, well, no, it would probably cause problems because an array can be blank.
It can.
Yeah, so it would cause, you can have an empty array that is still maintains itself as an array. And so that's why you have to do -1, because you want to sort of retrench it. You have this thing here, you realize that we don't need this extra 1, so you kind of say -1, and now you're right here.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is sort of self-explanatory, it's just the last column. Last column being the number of columns in all. Here the number of columns is 1, 2, and 3. But that's already coded in here. This is last column would be 3.
So in this case, this is where, as you explained, you're passing in the number of rows,
Yeah.
and then you're also passing in the number of columns.
Mm-hmm.
So if we had started in column 2, it's kind of the same idea. You, depending on what you want to pass in, maybe you only want to pass in 2 columns, so then you would do get last column -1.
1 minus 1.
How could we just like verify that we're passing in the right values? What's a way to check this?
Do I want to do a debugger?
Mm-hmm. And what are we going to be looking for?
We're going to be looking for the values. We want the array to have a bracket, student1, comma, 85, comma, follow up, and bracket.
So that's going to be once we've done the next component.
Mm-hmm.
We're right now, when we're highlighting the range, we're just telling the computer where to look,
Mm-hmm.
but we haven't told it to do anything yet. So the range returns as an object, but what I'm curious about is, since we've gone ahead and defined these 2 variables, last row and last column, outside of the range, we should be able, by doing that, we can see what value they return. Yeah, so you could put it there, or either way. Mm-hmm.
So save this, Control S.
So that's gonna,
Oh,
that
that's-
plays it.
So in this first debugger,
Mm-hmm.
You have this object. I'm not sure if it's telling us what you want to know. 11 is the last row.
Yep, yeah, great. So this is pulling in all of the variables right now that we have defined within the script editor. So even though the debugger hasn't gone further than last row, we can see what's coming up after. So if you want to keep going, what would you do?
If you want to keep going, you would.
Perfect. Yep, so that just goes to the next place where you put the debugger.
Last column would be 3. The key thing is that it's sort of cumulative. It preserves the fact that it tells it still, it doesn't take away the last row, so it keeps the last row here, and then tells you, okay, now that we know that, we also have last column, which is number 3. Continue
Let's
doing
do
that.
one more.
Did I put another debugger in there?
Yep, so we're gonna see that range pulls in as an object, which is what we expect. And if you, this is totally a preference, but if you had just wanted to write in one debugger, you could have put it after the range, since that's kind of where we wanted to land, as opposed to adding those additional two. And then, as you said, it preserves everything up to that value, so we could quickly see 11, 3, and then our object. Awesome. Great, so let's just get to that last component then, and make sure that we're pulling in the values. So you've set the range, and then this last line here is saying range get values. So how can we check that out? So in this case, once you, it worked.
So why did it work? Is that the question?
Well, once you make a change in a file, you need to restart the debugger because it's going off of the previous, but that's fine.
Yeah, so this is now what's sort of preserved in the memory, not the memory, but what it's looking at, is that it has this array, and these arrays are defined by, it's an array within an array, which sounds like a Star Wars sequel. You have student 1, which would be in our first column, student, then the number of percentage of attendance, and then the last one is follow-up. That's the first array with 3 elements. Second array is composed of the same, similar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Great. And if we, can you just show how you would expand this too? So if you want to investigate a little further, let's collapse that, yeah, and do data. Okay.
So what this is telling us is that this is the first element, the first array in the array of arrays.
Mm-hmm.
And because we start from the 0th, we start this whole thing, which I'm going to highlight right now, is the 0th array, even though intuitively we think of it as the first, but in JavaScript the convention is 0. And the thing inside of the brackets tells you the number of elements within that particular array. So the first element will be student 1, without the quotations. Then will be 85, and the follow-up will be the third element of that array.
Perfect.
So,
and if you, can you just expand one of those so we can see that as well?
yes.
Great. So this is valuable because now we can also see the data type that's getting pulled in. And if we want to specify and say, okay, let's pull in attendance, we know it would be within data I. If we're looping through, it would then be data I bracket 1. So we know the position. We are in data bracket 1. So we know the.
Okay. Great.
Great. Okay.
I'll switch back to you, Christina.
Thanks. So I'm just going to go ahead, and I had very similar to what Dimitri had. I'm just going to pop this. Don't look ahead at my code.
We're hiding. So
Oh, great, the suspense.
Let me know when you're.
Great. Okay, I'm all set. And I just copy and pasted this in. I want to format it, so I'm going to do Control A and Tab, and now it's back to looking good. Just a little trick. Okay.
So, actually, one of the things that I noticed on your line 7 is that you've actually nested sheet.getLastRow -1 and don't call it out as a separate variable. So it's a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, that's right. So I can't ever call that again because I've used it within the range. So the value, if you know you're going to be calling it a few times, you want to define it once. And I also can't see what the value is like Dimitri could within the debugger.
Okay.
That's a good thing to call it. And then I completely cheated to not make this dynamic at all, and I just hard-coded it to 3. Okay, so now what we want to do, we're going to work on, now that we have the data values, setting the arrays, and I want to do it a few different ways. So the next task is to go ahead and write a for loop. And same as before, you can access previous code if you want, but I really encourage you to type it out on your own because that's often the best way to learn. And within this for loop, we're going to evaluate if a student's attendance is less than 90, go ahead and push it into the array, and if not, continue. And just remember, we want to define the array outside of the for loop, because otherwise we're going to continue to overwrite it. So I'm going to say var student attendance equals an empty array, and then I would start my for loop. So we'll give you guys about 5 minutes. The end goal is to be able to loop through all 10 students and push in student, sorry, I didn't clarify, just push in student name if their attendance is less than 90. Give about 2 more minutes. Can I see just a little nod? Do we need more time? Are we feeling good? Almost done? Oh, great. Yeah, let's take a few more minutes. Let's do less than 90. And the method to push into the array is array.push. Okay. Let's go ahead. Do we have a volunteer? Thank you, Dimitri, for already sharing. You want to go ahead? You sure?
Yeah, I'm shy.
I can share again, but I did it wrong.
Let's take a look.
Yeah. Eric, do you mind copying Amy onto the screen?
Who?
Me?
Me.
Thank you.
You?
Amy?
You need to share your screen, Amy.
Oh, she does not.
Yeah, I do. Right?
We just have you on your first day of work.
Okay. Is that showing me?
Yeah.
Showing me photo?
Yeah, perfection.
Okay. So I pulled in my values and then I wrote my for loop. And I pulled in the name of this, I pulled in the first student who had less than 90. My question is that it stopped.
Wait, can you, I'm not convinced I'm looking at the right. What line are you on?
I'm on line 20 is my debugger.
Okay, perfect.
So say again what you're seeing or what you're.
So I ran my for loop through my data.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked it to stop, I guess, on the first student who was less than 90.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked it to give me what student that was, so I pushed in the student name, which is what you're seeing over here.
Mm-hmm.
And when I ran my debugger, I got student 1.
Can you scroll down in your debugger? I think you can scroll left a little bit, or expand it the other way. There we go. So we can see like that stuff. Yeah.
Did I do this correctly?
And now, I mean, can you pull that down a little bit? So go back into your code where the debugger is, or like pull the yeah, that's good.
So what are we are expecting right now in the array student name to only be pushed if the attendance is less than 90, is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
So you're wondering why you're saying you were expecting this to stop on the first student that had attendance less than 90, but it ended up stopping on.
No. So I was expecting it to give me the name of every student who was less than 90, but it stopped on the first student.
Yep.
So
Can anyone? No, it's written right, but something's going on. Can anyone else have a clue to why we're seeing that happen?
I think when she's pushing student in square brackets, it's actually pushing it as an element as opposed to just pushing student itself. I don't know if that's it.
That's okay. So she's pushing student in. So what she's saying is push an array with a single value in it. That is the value of student each time through the loop.
Amy, could you scroll up a little bit and give us a little bit less of your debugger?
Oh.
I just want to see where student is defined. Oh, I see, row
14.
Oh.
No, it's good. This is good.
Yeah.
And can you remember? Christina keeps talking about a little trick she does to make her code look nicer. Do you remember how she reformats her code?
Highlight tab.
Or just Control A.
Control A will select the whole everything in that file. Okay. Does that? I don't know. Does that help answer any question? It might not, but it helps me.
I think in the direction Jared's going, Amy, if you just, the nice thing about having your code in this format is you can kind of see where you are within a loop and how the brackets are speaking to each other. So if you click on that bracket directly above your debugger.
Oh. Yeah.
So can you actually just click on it?
Get the cursor right next to it.
Yeah. So do you see how it highlights both that one and then its mate?
Yes.
So, so if you go to the one below it now and highlight that, that tells us that right now, where is our debugger?
Okay. So our debugger is just reading the if statement.
So it's outside of the if statement, but it's still within the loop. So if you were to continue, what would you expect to see?
Then the whole list of names.
If you hadn't moved the debugger, if you went one more, it would
Go to the next name.
exactly.
Yeah, so another
it's
clue,
increasing
right?
by
If you
one.
go expand the debugger part below before you, yeah, just really quick, just pull up the debugger so we can see more of the values in there, right? One clue you have is like what value is I right now?
0.0.
0.
Yeah, so that's another thing. It's letting you know that you are still.
In space 0. And the first part
It's in the
I read.
first. It's still the first time through the loop where I has never incremented yet. So now if you run it again.
Okay, so now when I ran it again, I found students 1, 2, 6, 8, 9, and 10. And now it's
Exactly.
definitely.
And just to clarify, that's because you moved the debugger down one. So yeah, now it does the whole loop.
And now I is 10, right?
The
And
entire list.
which is the entire list, yeah. And so you don't have to be inside the loop to see the value of I, right? Like you should expect I gets incremented in the loop, and then at every point after, it's still that same value, 10. So that's just a quick way to know that also that it iterated all the way through all your values.
Thank you for helping me problem solve.
What's the logic of the debugger? Like in the sense that it initially thought it was a 0.0, and we moved it out of the first brackets. We had, I think, 3 brackets that she had, and we just moved it down one, the debugger. What is the scope of the debugger? What does it look for? Like, does it look for the thing that's within the nearest bracket, within further on?
It's telling it where to stop in the code. So
It's kind of just like a window into, so the way it's, right, there's a compiler, right? Like the code is being, when you click run, there's a sequence of events that follow like the rules of JavaScript, right? You're just saying to pause at a point in that execution and just take a look at what all the values are everywhere, which is why, like, Amy, can you share again, actually? Yeah, or maybe you don't have to, but the point is just like, it's literally just showing you what all of the variables are equal to at the point that debugger's been hit.
So debugger, so when we put in the debugger, we see at that point, we don't see anything before it, slightly before. It's like it arrests whatever the compiler is doing at that particular moment.
Right, like if on line 11 you created a variable called I and set it to 1,000, and at the point by the time the debugger stops on row 20, I has been reset to 0 and then incremented up to 10, and so I would still be 10 at that point in the code. So I don't know if that answers what you're saying, but like previously I was a different value. You're not going to see what that previous value was. You're only seeing what it is at that moment.
and by putting the debugger in that for loop, as Amy had that first time, the code knows to stop at the debugger, so it wasn't going to iterate through the whole loop, but by moving it down 1, at this point, it's not going to stop till it's out of the loop, because our code has said, while I is less than the length of our data, which is 10, keep going.
Okay, so after placing it outside of that loop permits the compiler to do whatever it does, and then the debugger appears inside of that loop, and then we see everything that has occurred up until that point. If we had put the debugger a little bit before, we wouldn't have had time to actually have that loop occur. In fact, it would have occurred before the loop even started. Hence why we had this 0.0 as our value.
0.0 is just the way this particular debugger is showing you. That's just the way it displays numbers. So even though we said var I equals 0, it's showing you 0.0. But when the debugger was where Amy had it originally, it basically var got set to 0, and then it went through lines 13 through 18, and then stopped on the debugger. If you click the next button, the little triangle with the line next to it, the compiler literally would have gone back up to line 12, incremented I to 1, and then ran through that code again, and then stopped at the debugger again. And it would just keep going through and stopping at the debugger until you broke out of that loop. Yeah, does that make sense?
It makes,
yeah. Okay.
To me, it's pretty abstract.
Yeah.
So it runs a debugger of each iteration, just like everything else.
Okay. So in the last few minutes, what I want us to do is practice writing back the array, and I want to do it 2 ways. So one is write it to your sheet vertically, and then one write it back horizontally. So the same thing as when you get the data, you need to tell it where to look. That's the exact same practice for writing back to a sheet. So we need to tell the program where to look and how much to expect, how many values to expect.
Sorry, I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to separate out the get data function from the push attendance function, and I was having a hard time getting the object data, or the array of arrays data, to appear in the debugger of another function. So I was trying to write my loop as a separate function from the push attendance function.
Do you want to share?
Menika's.
No, sorry.
This is the good practice that Eric is doing, which is trying to, we historically have written a lot of code that's really lengthy and is doing essentially like 5 different functions when it should be broken out as one. So Eric, in your situation, I think what you want to do is make sure you're passing in the data.
Right, so let's just, is this useful for everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, questions.
So I'm gonna, what's the, shortcut for commenting?
Control backslash.
Control.
Oh,
Control backslash.
Yeah, backslash.
Nice. Control forward slash. Right. Yeah. Alright. So if I want to just, everybody seeing this? My mission?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if I want to just get data, which if I run the debugger from the get data function, so you can see that it's a valid object. And then what I tried to do was get return data as a...
Yep, and you don't need the parentheses.
That's it. Brackets?
Nope, nothing, just space.
Return.
Yep.
Space.
Do need the space. And a semicolon for good practice.
One long word.
Okay. So then, in the push attendance function, if I just want to run the get data function?
Well, it depends where you want to start and where you want to end up. So what function are you going to call from when you click the play button to run it? Like what function are you trying to run? Get data or push ATT?
So within push ATT, I'd like the object data to appear.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I guess now, okay, so return. And so if I run push ATT, great. Nope, no, not good.
Nope. Close. That's, I mean, that's,
Well,
you just need, there's no way, you're actually getting the data, but you don't have any way to like make use of it.
so do I have to call? No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So should I call var data, well,
Yeah, you can do that.
my data equals
There you go.
get data. And then so my,
Yeah, so you were getting the data, you just weren't assigning it to anything. So it was just kind of like, I don't know where it is. It's just,
They're just being constant without anything.
you just don't have a way to access it or pass it around. But you
I need to assign
assign
it
it
to
to a
something.
variable. Yep.
Okay,
That's great.
that was really cool.
So we're out of time. We can hang out a few minutes longer. If you did have questions on setting the values both vertically and horizontally, it is in the help text. And just, as I said before, you just want to point the computer to, if it's going to be vertically, you want to call out the number of rows. If it's going to be horizontally, you want to call out the number of columns. Just thinking about kind of the space of the array where you're going to set it. Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
It's good scaffolding week. All right.